Welcome back to Learn with Chris. I'm Chris. In the video today, I'm going to look at one of the poems from the Poetic Edda, Thrymskvida. This is the poem where Thor loses his hammer and gets it back. It's one of the most famous poems in the Poetic Edda. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to paraphrase or summarize the poem from memory, and then I'm going to look at a summary of it from AI. So I'm using, again, NotebookLM.google. I put the entire poem through that software, and it's produced I'm looking at it now, 8-minute and 8-second kind of podcast. I'm assuming it's going to be the same voices as last time, a man and a woman giving an overview, kind of like talking about this poem. So I haven't listened to it yet, so I don't know what they're going to say. But basically, I want to compare my ability to summarize this poem to the AI's, and just to see which is better. Did I leave out anything valuable or important? Did the AI leave out anything valuable or important or kind of fundamental to the meaning of the poem? Did the AI make any mistakes? Did I make any mistakes? So again, this is a kind of a test. I'm just experimenting to see how useful AI programs are for summarizing text, for summarizing like an entire poem. Maybe in another video, I might actually even just put one stanza of a poem and see what it says then compared to the entire poem. Okay, so let me give a summary of Thrymskvida poem. So this is the poem of Thrym. Thrym is a Jotun, and he's the one who stole Thor's hammer. So basically, this is a summary of the poem. So Thor wakes up, can't find his hammer, Mjolnir is gone. He goes to Loki for help. So Loki suspects maybe that it was taken or stolen by the Jotnar. Loki goes to Freyja, and he borrows her feather cape that allows him to turn into a bird. So she loans Loki the cape, and then Loki uses it, and he flies off to Jotunheim, the land of the Jotnar, the land of the giants, and he goes and talks to the king of the Jotun, Thrym, who the poem is named after. And he basically asks him, have you seen, straight to the point, right? Have you seen Thor's hammer? Do you know where it is? And Thrym admits he took it, and it is buried under the ground, and no one is ever going to see it again unless Freyja agrees to be my bride. So basically, he has kidnapped the hammer, and he'll only give it back if Freyja agrees to marry him. So Loki returns to Asgard with this information, and he tells Thor, and then both of them, actually maybe not both of them, but at least Thor goes to Freyja. And he didn't exactly ask her, he kind of told her. He's like, okay, you're going to put on the wedding bridal and you're going to go to Jotunheim and marry Thrym. He didn't quite ask her, he just kind of told her that she's going to do that. And she was like, no way. And she absolutely refused to partake in that. She didn't want to be married to a Jotun, right? So she said, no, not doing it. At which case, the gods had a little council, and they kind of decided, okay, how are we going to get back the hammer? Because, of course, the hammer is extremely powerful, and they need it. Thor needs his most powerful weapon to defend the Aesir against the Jotnar. So they need it back. So they have a little council about how to get back the hammer, because Freyja will not marry the Jotun. So in this little council, they have Heimdallr, because he has the ability to see into the future. He saw that Thor himself would be dressed up in the bridal clothing and would get the hammer back. So basically, Heimdallr has the idea for Thor to dress up as a woman, particularly to dress up as Freya, including her famous necklace, and go and get the hammer himself, pretending to be her. He doesn't like the idea, of course, because, he's a man and he doesn't want to dress up as a woman. But eventually he agrees to it because Loki points out that you really need your hammer back. We can't defend Asgard without it. And Loki agrees to go with him as well, and he will be effectively disguised as, remember that Loki's a shapeshifter, so he disguises himself as Freya's one of bridesmaids. So Loki is a bridesmaid of Freya, and Thor is disguised as Freya, and then they travel to Jotunheim, and they're received by Thrym. So basically at the wedding feast, a couple of things happen. The first is that they bring out the food, and Thor, being Thor, he eats like an entire ox and a whole bunch of fish. He just eats a massive amount of food. And Thrym, here's where the kind of the humor or the comedy comes in. Thrym's like, what kind of woman can eat so much food, right? He's shocked by how much Freya, Thor, had eaten. And Loki, being pretty quick on his feet, he says, because Freya was because it took 8 days to travel. 8 days to travel there from Asgard to Jotunheim, that he said she hasn't eaten in 8 days. She's been so excited to marry you, right? That's why she's so hungry, right? And then the next part, Thrym goes to lift up the bridal veil, and he sees the fierce eyes of Thor, and then he comments, so Thrym the giant comments on that. And again, Loki, quick on his feet, says, her eyes are bloodshot because she hasn't slept for 8 days because she's been so excited to meet you. So again, another kind of excuse. Thor doesn't have the beautiful eyes of Freya, right? And they bring out some gifts, particularly they bring out Mjolnir to bless the wedding. At which case Thor grabs his hammer, immediately kills Thrym, and I think of maybe his wife, or he killed a couple of the Jotnar in the wedding feast. I don't think he killed all of them, but he killed at least Thrym, the king, and probably his wife. And the poem basically ends, and that's how Thor got his hammer back. It's one of the shortest poems in the Poetic Edda. It's not very long at all. So that's my summary. Let's have a listen to the AI summary again from NotebookLM. And let's see if I forgot anything, or if they forget anything, or if they make any mistakes. So let's have a listen. Remember, I haven't listened to this yet either. This is first for me as well.
All right, buckle up everyone, because today we're diving into a story that's equal parts hilarious and epic, the tale of Thor's stolen hammer.
Oh, this is a good one. Everyone thinks they know Thor and his hammer.
But trust me, there's more to it than meets the eye. We're talking cosmic chaos, trickery, a giant with a pretty audacious wedding request.
It's a wild ride.
Yeah.
And we're going deep into the source material for this one, the Thrymskvida.
That's right. So to set the stage, picture this.
Pronunciation is a little bit off, but not bad. Thrymskvida. It's a little bit hard to say, actually.
Thor, the god of thunder. The big guy with the red beard.
And let's not forget...
Ooh, the big guy with the red beard. Excellent. That is excellent. Because, of course, all the Marvel movies have Thor with, from, what's his name, Chris Hemsworth. Blonde, of course. No, red-haired. And this is actually quite important because when we go to the story of the Rigthula, where Heimdall, as Rig, creates the three social classes, the Thrall, Carl, and Jarl. The Carl, the kind of the middle class, the child born had red hair. It's quite specific in the poem that he had red hair, while the Jarl's kid had blonde hair, right? So the red hair is kind of like the commoner or the common man. And that's what Thor is. Thor he's the guardian of not just Asgard, but he's also the guardian of Midgard, the guardian of the common man. There's a reason why Thor has red hair. And they note that, excellent, because of course in the Marvel movies, they have him with blonde hair, right? Which is completely wrong. So good for the AI.
Temper that could rival a thunderstorm.
Exactly. He wakes up one morning, reaches for his trusty hammer, Mjolnir, and it's gone.
You have to feel for the guy, but also you don't want to be anywhere near him when he realizes his hammer is missing. Talk about a bad day.
I mean, we're not just talking about losing your keys here. This is Mjolnir, the hammer that shapes mountains, blesses marriages, even controls the weather. It's basically an extension of Thor himself.
And a symbol of order in their world.
So naturally, Thor is furious. He's shaking his beard, his hair's bristling, the whole 9 yards.
As you do when your godly powers are MIA, you can practically hear the giants across the way thinking, uh-oh, what do we do now?
Right, because you know something's about to go down. So who does Thor call on for help?
If you had to guess.
Loki, of course, the god of mischief himself.
Which might seem like a recipe for disaster, but remember, Loki's also incredibly cunning. He's got a knack for getting what he wants, no matter the cost.
And Thor desperately needs his hammer back. Their first stop. Freyja, the god.
Freyja, no. Freya. So Freya is the actual reconstructed Norse pronunciation for her name. Most people would just read it Freya, which I would say like 90% of people say Freya. I don't. I say Freya because I think that's the more accurate pronunciation. Freya would be like that's what it would sound like if you just read it directly, right, in English. Here they got it wrong.
Goddess of love and magic. Now, before you jump to conclusions, they're not looking for love advice.
So that might be interesting. No, they need something a little more practical, let's say.
Yeah. Freyja's got some seriously powerful magical artifacts in her keeping, one of which is essential to the plan. Her falcon cloak.
The one that lets you fly unseen, right? Handy.
Exactly. And here's...
Fly unseen. I don't know about that, but it turns you into a bird and you fly. I don't know about fly unseen.
That's where it gets interesting. Freyja just hands it over, no questions asked.
Which tells you a lot about her character, honestly.
Yeah.
She knows the stakes, she trusts Thor, or at least she trusts that he'll get her cloak back to her.
She didn't give the cloak to Thor, she gave the cloak to Loki. So that's actually, it seems to be a mistake there. And as I recall, she said, I would give it to you even if it was made of gold, or I would give it to you even if it was made of silver, right? So it's actually, she has absolutely zero problem at all handing over the cloak for Loki to go find out what happened to Thor's hammer. But of course, as we go further on, she absolutely refuses to marry the Jotun.
One Piece.
With the cloak secured, Loki sets off to Jotunheim, the land of the giants.
Jotun. Jotunheim. Jotun. Again, just pronouncing it like a J in English. So the AI can't really get some of that nuance down. Jotun.
And it doesn't take long for him to track down the culprit, Thrym, the giant king.
And this is where things get really interesting. Remember those audacious wedding requests we mentioned?
Oh, this is where we find out about it, right?
Yeah, buckle up. Thrym, he's smitten, or at least he's got a plan. He wants Freyja's hand in marriage in exchange for the hammer.
Talk about adding insult to injury.
Right. This isn't just about some stolen property anymore. This is about power, about a giant shaking things up between gods and, well, everyone else.
I bet Thor was thrilled to hear that news.
It's actually extremely normal, common for the Jotnar to particularly marry into the Vanir family, but particularly it would have been Grigr, the female Jotun. They would marry a Vanir god, and then they would become goddesses. I don't know of any particular stories of a Jotun marrying a Vanir goddess. Typically, it's the other way around. But if Thrym had have married Freya, he would have been elevated to being a god, because that's exactly how that worked, right? When you marry into the god's family, you become a god. But it's usually the female giantesses, or Gigur, who marry into the Vanir, and then the Vanir goddesses would marry into the Aesir. So it's kind of like the Jotun would be down here, the Vanir would be here, and the Aesir would be here, right? So it's kind of like marrying up, right? The female marrying up, which, of course, is extremely common and normal all over the place. So let's listen.
Let me guess. Thor was all for sweet talking the giant and maybe sending a nice gift basket.
Oh, not quite. Thor, he's a man of action, you know. The poem says he flat out refused, roaring, "Me with the gods' unmanly call if I let bind the bridal veil."
Yeah, that track.
No, Thor did not. Okay, this is actually really wrong here. So here they're saying that Thor refused Thrym's kind of ultimatum, right? You know, Freya marries me or you never get the hammer back. No, Thor went to Freya and said, "You're doing this." And she said no. So this is actually quite wrong.
Tracks. Not exactly the surrender your hammer and no one gets hurt approach.
Right. He was ready to turn Jotunheim into a giant crater. Marriage proposal be damned. But luckily...
Won't waste the voice of reason.
Well, he's got a plan, as always.
Yeah.
And this one, it's a doozy. He somehow convinces Thor to play along with the most ridiculous, outlandish idea.
Okay, now you have to tell me, what could be more ridiculous than a giant demanding to marry a goddess in exchange for a stolen hammer?
How about the god of thunder, disguised as a bride, going to Jotunheim to marry the giant?
Wait, seriously, they're good.
Okay, Loki didn't convince. Well, actually, he kind of did, but it wasn't his idea. The idea for Thor to dress up as Freya to get the hammer back, that was Heimdallr's idea. But Loki actually, at the end of it, convinced Thor to go ahead with it because Thor, he was like, "No way, I'm not doing that. Everybody would look down at me because I would be, basically, he didn't want to feminize himself and do that." But Loki was the one that said, "Well, there's really no choice here. This is the only way to get your hammer back." And then Thor agreed to it. But it wasn't Loki's idea. It was Heimdallr's idea. So another error here.
You're gonna dress Thor up as Freyja?
Oh yeah. Veil, dress, the works. They figure they can sneak Thor in, get the hammer back when no one's looking, and everyone goes home happy. Well, except maybe the giant.
And Freyja, I'm assuming. This whole thing is nuts. Okay, but I have to ask. They're really gonna send the God of Thunder, known for his, shall we say, forceful personality, undercover as a bride?
That's the plan. And the poem doesn't skimp on the details. It describes Thor decked out with keys around him, let their rattle, and down to his knees hung woman's dress, with gems full broad upon his breast.
And Freya's necklace as well. She loans her necklace for this as well. So she just doesn't give herself up for this, but she had already lent Loki her feather cloak, or falcon cloak as they say here, and she also loans her necklace as well. So these are important artifacts. Yeah.
Pretty cap to crown his head.
You're kidding. This is amazing. They even gave him a rattling bridal crown. There's something almost subversive about it, this idea of a powerful god in a traditionally feminine role.
It's definitely got layers.
Yeah.
Some scholars think it's poking fun at gender roles. Others see it as highlighting Thor's strength. The fact that he's so secure in his power, he could pull this off.
It's fascinating either way. Okay, so we've got Thor all dressed up. What's next? Did they at least let him bring his hammer? His little something borrowed, something.
How could he bring his hammer? The hammer was stolen. That's the whole point. It's weird.
Incredibly destructive.
You would think he would have learned by now, right? He actually tries to bring Mjolnir along.
Oh, Thor. Of course he did.
What? What? He tried to bring his hammer on the mission to get back his hammer. Okay, so AI has completely gone off the rails at this point.
I can just imagine Loki rolling his eyes.
Loki manages to talk him out of it. Again, honestly, Loki deserves a medal for patience after this. He promises to tag along as Thor's, let's call it maid of honor, and off they go to the wedding.
The god of thunder and the god of mischief on the...
This is called hallucinations, where AI gets confused. And so unfortunately, so far, there's a lot of mistakes here. A lot more than when I did the Voluspa video a couple of days ago. So yeah, in other words, if you did what I did, put a poem into the AI and you got this back, you're actually going to get so much incorrect information that it's not actually very useful. So this is actually quite disappointing so far compared to the Voluspa one, which was pretty good, at least 90% correct.
their way to crash a giant's wedding with one disguised as the bride. This is incredible. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, so Thor's undercover as the blushing bride, about to marry a giant. What could go wrong?
Oh, you know this is going to be good. Remember, we've got ancient poetry describing this, not some dry historical account.
So give me the highlights. How does this whole crazy scheme actually work?
Well, first they get to the feast, and Thor, being Thor...
Never one to skip a meal.
Oh, absolutely. The guy can pack it away. The poem says he polishes off an entire ox, 8 whole salmon. 8. Plus 3 tons of mead.
I forgot the mead. Yes, 3. Yes, I forgot that he drank a lot of mead as well.
That's a lot of mead.
I mean, I've been known to have a big appetite, but that's next level. Did the giants even notice, or did they just assume Frasier was really hungry?
You'd think they'd be suspicious, but according to the poem, they just chalk it up to Frasier's keen appetite. The giants are clueless, man.
Or maybe they were just trying to get on with the ceremony. So what happens next?
It's actually one of the funniest parts, and they're leaving it out. So again, the giants, or the Jotnar, do notice about how much Freya had eaten and drunk, and they actually question it. And Loki comes up with the excuse that she hadn't eaten for 8 days. So they skip over this, but it's actually a very important part of the poem, because it's funny. But here they just skipped it over. So not a very good summary in my opinion.
Does Thor just grab the hammer and make a run for it?
Not quite. There's this hilarious scene where Thrym, eager to claim his bride, leans in for a kiss
Uh-oh.
and promptly freaks out.
I bet Thor didn't smell very flowery and bridal, huh?
The poem says Thrym cries out about Frasia's eyes. Fire, methinks, from her eyes burns forth.
Poor Thrym. He really thought he was marrying the goddess of love.
Well, he's about to get a crash course in Thor's not-so-tender love. But first, Loki, smooth as ever, steps in and explains away Thor's terrifying gaze as lovesickness.
Lovesickness, that's rich.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Lovesickness. No, wrong again. No, it very explicitly says Freya was so excited to get here to marry you, so she hasn't slept for 8 days. That's why the eyes are so fierce, right? Because she hadn't slept for 8 days, not lovesickness. So yeah, quite wrong.
Tells Thrym that Frasier hasn't slept for 8 nights because she's so excited about the wedding.
Loki.
Okay, they followed up. Okay, fine.
He is good. Okay, but they still don't have the hammer yet, right? What's the end game here?
Well, the giants wheel out Mjolnir for the ceremony. You know, to bless the union and all that.
Oh,
Right.
the irony.
The best part, they actually put the hammer right in Thor's lap.
No way. What does Thor do?
The poem just says he smiled beneath his veil. You know, that calm before the storm kind of smile.
I bet. All right, lay it on me. What happens when Thor...
He smiled beneath the veil? I don't remember that. I'm going to have to check that.
finally gets his hands on Mjolnir?
Let's just say the wedding reception came to a very sudden end. Thor lets loose, smashes the skulls of the giants, leaves the whole hall stained red with their blood.
Talk about a short honeymoon.
You don't steal from the god of thunder and get away with it. But
I'm not sure he killed everybody in the room. I would need to check again. I know he killed at least 2 people. I don't know about everybody.
listen, beyond the carnage, think about what this story is really saying. The hammer's back where it belongs. Order is restored.
It's a reminder that sometimes you've got to fight for what's right, even if it means donning a dress and crashing a giant's wedding. It's a story about strength, about thinking outside the box.
Exactly. And facing your fears, no matter how big and scary they may seem. The Thrymskvida, it's wild, it's funny, it's action-packed, and it gives us a glimpse into how these ancient people saw their world, their gods, even themselves.
Definitely makes you appreciate the enduring power of these stories, how they can still resonate with us today. And on that note, until next time, keep exploring.
All right, so it's the end of the AI-generated podcast. I'm going to check two things. I'm going to check if Thor killed everybody in the room, and I'm also going to check if he smiled once the hammer was put in his lap. So I'll be back in a second. All right, that looks actually correct. He did laugh once he saw the hammer, and it does say in Old Norse here in stanza 31, och at Jotuns alla lamthi fell all the giants. So yes, so that was actually correct. He did laugh to him. It seems like he laughed to himself once he saw the hammer coming out, because it was, okay, great, I just need to get my hands on this hammer and I'm going to kill all of these giants. And he did kill all of the giants. So that is correct. So the last part there was right. So give it a little bit of points, but because they made a lot of mistakes for this, I'm going to put it at 60%, maybe 70%. A lot of mistakes, but perhaps overall it did capture the essence of the poem, but too many mistakes, and they had a couple of pretty serious hallucinations. So yeah, this AI stuff is interesting, but it got to get better, right? If it's making significant errors, it's not useful, right? So it has to get better. Anyway, so this was a test to just to see how compare my own recollection of this poem to the AI's. And so, thank you for watching. Hope you have a good day, and well, see you next time. Bye-bye.